Hi there, welcome to this tutorial on the Ace of Cups. So the Ace of Cups is the feminine counterpart of the Ace of Wands, and as we can see here, the Ace of Wands has this phallic dimension to it, whereas with the Ace of Cups we have a more receptive quality to this card. And we can see a white light coming down here, giving reflections and refractions of water contained within the cup here. And this gives off the different colours of creation. We can also compare the Ace of Cups to the Rider-Waite version of this card. And as we can see here on the right hand side, with the Rider-Waite version we have a chalice here overflowing with 5 streams of water representing the 5 senses, and below the palm of the hand is the great sea representing the limitlessness of the cosmic consciousness. And we have a dove here descending towards the cup, which is a symbol of the gradual sort of aligning to spiritual peace, spiritual love, and being that pure channel. In the Thoth version of the card we have the Sea of B.O.T.A here on the outer edges of the card represented in black. So what we'll do now is go on to the divinatory meanings of the Ace of Cups and then look at the philosophy of this card in more detail. We'll now look at the divinatory meanings of the Ace of Cups, and in the upright position it can mean that we're longing for our cup of life, that inspiration that fills the heart, to be filled. With the aces it represents more of the potential of the rest of the suit, so we may not know at this stage what we're searching for, but it reminds us just to be open to all possibilities, and it's something to fulfill us on a heart level. It also means to be prepared to be vulnerable, because as well as opening up the possibility to love, you're also opening yourself up to pain and sorrow, which is the other side of the coin, part and parcel of the duality of life. It can represent an overall feeling of being and becoming open, empathic, loving. These are all receptive qualities. And you're aligning with that open channel, which is the Ace of Cups, which is that being that channel of light from higher consciousness and transmitting that to the world. So examples of things that the Ace of Cups could be referring to could be a spiritual path, a relationship, obtaining a deeper meaning to your life in some way. It could even refer to a job which is more heartfelt. And it represents divine love and compassion flowing through yourself, and it's been that conduit, that channel for that universal love. It reminds us that it's a time for giving and making the most of any opportunities to help others. And also it can relate, which I haven't got down here, to pregnancy in relation to other cards. There are a few reversed meanings that I've put in. It can indicate the need for more self-love before giving to others. Fearful about being open to life and other people, perhaps due to previous trauma, and therefore you're stopping those possibilities from fulfilling their potential. You're closed off to opportunities of the heart. And following on from this, not being ready to open to others emotionally. But this can always be worked around by doing things in private, on your own, through counselling, self-journal, or talking to people close to you that you trust. So those are a few of the applications of the Ace of Cups. In the last part of the video, I'll go through how the Ace of Cups relates to a Celtic cross to further add some detail to its divinatory setting. Okay, I'm going to go on to the Ace of Cups in relation to the Tetragrammaton next. I have mentioned the Tetragrammaton before, and it is essentially something which is a symbolic representation of the fourfold nature of God. Now, in essence, God would just be a unity, like the white light of Keter. It would have no parts, no divisions. So, in effect, the Tetragrammaton is more a symbolic representation of the reflection of God in man. And we can see that in the next slide, but just highlighted in yellow here is where it is referred to in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's been taken out of more modern interpretations of the Bible. So in the next slide we see how the Tetragrammaton relates to Jehovah, and with the Ace of Wands it was connected to the Yod, or masculine facet of God, and here we have the He Primal, which is the feminine counterpart. And going back to the original slide, we had the Ace of Wands next to the Ace of Cups here, so we've got the masculine and the receptive feminine. There's also a relationship between the Ace of Cups and the Princess of Cups, as indeed there is a relationship between all of the aces and the princesses of their particular suit. The princesses being the thrones of the aces. And we can see this represented symbolically in the scallop nature of the dress of the Princess of Cups and the scalloping effect that we get on the Ace of Cups itself. So we have therefore a relationship between the Ace of Wands, Ace of Cups, and between the Ace of Cups and the Princess of Cups in relation to the Tetragrammaton. So the Ace of Cups is linked, as all the aces are, to Keter on the Tree of Life here, forms part of the supernal triangle, and it is the apex of the supernal triangle. It represents that unity of spirit, the potential, the seed and source of creation, which is why Crowley says that the aces are the seeds of the particular element. So the Ace of Cups would be like the seed of the potential of the rest of the suit of cups. And this is Keter on the Tree of Life. So Keter essentially also means crown, which is part of but not strictly integrated with the Tree of Life, because this unity stands on its own in a sense. It is just the potential, and until that potential is actually becomes manifest, until you actually get a will in creation coming from this path here, then you just reside in the nothingness of Keter. And it's called the hidden intelligence, path number 1. It's that hidden enlightenment, in a sense, that is within the potential of each individual, which has just a unity. There are no surfaces, no edges, no beginnings, no end. And these sort of principles need to be looked into and meditated upon to fully grasp what they are talking about. In fact, the mind could never understand what the unity of spirit is all about, because the mind just divides. Okay, the final bit in relationship to the Tree of Life and the Ace of Cups is the 4 worlds. So we had Absolute here, which related to which is the first world, the world of inspiration, and it related to the suit of Wands, with the Ace of Wands being associated with Keter in Absolute. Now, from that world we have a second tree of life, a second emanation, which is related to cups. And this is the world of B.O.T.A here, and we have the Ace of Cups shown in relationships to Keter in B.O.T.A, so it's not Keter in Absolute, which would be the Ace of Wands. Now, the first world here had its emanation from the three veils of negative existence, which occur above the tree of life, which I have talked about in some videos. But it's essentially the nothingness out of which everything was created. And from this first world here, we have a subsequent tree of life relating to the aces and the rest of the Ace of Cups and the rest of the suit of cups. And there are two further worlds of Yetzirah and Saya, which relate to the suits of swords and discs respectively. So what is the take home from that? Well, if the first world of Absolute here relating to the wands is the inspiration coming from the ace here, that inspiration there, then arising from that we get the emotional engagement that receives and nurtures that inspiration. So something is done and directed with that inspiration. So again, this nurturing quality comes from that receptivity of the Ace of Cups. So in terms of the ace and its numerology, we can safely say it's related to the number 1, which is the monad. It's a perfect unity with no dimensions of its own. It's only when we combine it with another point that we get the line here, which is a one-dimensional drawing. So the aces here relate to the unity and the non-dimensional nature of spirit. And that's why when I said when we look at the Tetragrammaton, which divides God up into parts, it's really more of a worldly expression of God in the creation. It's not the unity of enlightenment, which is what the spiritual path is all about. So we'll next move on to the Ace of Cups in relation to the Decan wheel. Apologies for the blurred nature of this slide. I'll try and adjust it. It's not great, but somewhat smaller. With relation to the Ace of Cups, we can see here that all of the aces are on the outermost circle of the Decan wheel, which is the central bit here, where you get the minor arcana cards 2 through to 10. Now the aces, as are the princesses, they relate more to geographic areas rather than rulership over signs. So for the Ace of Cups here, we have the area occupied by the constellations of Libra, Scorpio and Sagittarius, and they are said to rule the quadrant of those three constellations above the North Pole, and also the area of the Pacific Ocean. So it's more to do with geography in terms of the aces rather than astrology per se. In this next section we'll have a look at the main symbolism contained within the card, and I've done a summary diagram here and I'll go through the main points. As you can see in the very background here, we've got the Black Sea of Binah, which is associated with the third Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. And we saw in the diagram for the supernal triangle. So this is the Great Mother. It also relates to the Three of Discs, where again you've got this galloped effect, and this again is the Sea of B.O.T.A. So it's almost unnoticeable in the card, because the main feature is obviously the blue cup, which the blue representing really the second, almost like this second ray. Looking at Alice Bailey's rays, we have the first ray of will and power, which is the colour red, and that again relates to the redness of the Ace of Wands. The blue ray that Alice Bailey talked about is the channel which receives the light. We've also got these refractions, when the light hits the water here, and that's very similar to the prism effect, where you get the oneness of God and the creation in all of its colours. So essentially that is exactly what is happening as this white light comes down here. You get the different colours formed from the creation. You have the lotus here. Crowley says there are two lotuses in one, but it looks like one lotus, from which this cup emerges, which is, we'll talk a little bit in further detail about the symbolism of the cup itself, but it has these twisted handles, and they're said to be twisted snakes, and the symbolism of a twisted snake, as we've seen in previous videos, is that of regeneration. So in this context they represent this love which just regenerates itself. It needs nothing, it is just in fact the source of creation. The cup itself traditionally refers to the Holy Grail. We see a traditional Holy Grail here, which is symbolic of the first eon of Osiris, whereby in Crowley's eon of Horus we have the Cup of Babylon, and that is spelt with an A rather than a Y. We see it with the Scarlet Woman here in the Lust card holding it up, and also in the Ace of Cups. So on that note here we have the three interlocking circles here in the middle of the cup, and those three interlocking circles also relate back to the Hierophant, when he is holding a wand with three interlocking circles, just the same, and it represents the three eons of Osiris, Isis and Horus. And as we indicated, the one that is relevant here in this particular suit is that of the Cup of Babylon and Horus here. So in previous eons we've got the Holy Grail here, which has been linked to the Last Supper, here it is, and also the Crucifixion, and that was the eon of the sacrificial god, even though like the crucifixion itself is just an analogy for the surrendering of the small self on the cross of matter to the higher self. So that's about it for the symbolism. In Crowley's Book of Thoth he does talk about other symbols being on the cup, but those are certainly not on the finished card here. This light here is, I would say, is again the channeled light of Ket as it goes through us and it's expressed out into the world, but it doesn't specifically indicate what that is, but it's certainly, channeled light of one description. So So not a great deal of symbolism, but just to clarify that with the Ace of Cups, it really is, as I've said, a channel. And in order to understand this card, we need, in a sense, to become like the Ace of Cups in order to be a channel for spirit, and then giving out into the world to be of service, to be of a spiritual servant. And it involves like this internal surrender to the intelligence of the higher planes of consciousness, which happens through the emptiness that we get through spiritual practice. And that involves the opening of the heart to this oneness of universal love. So with all of that in mind, we can now just move on to the final part of the video, which is to look at the Ace of Cups in relation to the Celtic cross spread. And so we move on to the last section of the video. So if the Ace of Cups is the very first card that comes out in the spread and is the central theme of the tarot spread, then it could indicate that you're ready to open up to something new and inspiring, even though you may know not exactly what it is at this time, because the aces are a little bit nebulous. They just represent the beginnings of things, so it's being open to something, and it's mainly to do with the opening of the heart. So if we move the card into position 2 now, in position 2 it's crossing the initial card here, so the energy of the first card is blocked, and it indicates that either something or someone is preventing you from openly expressing your love of life and your inspiration of finding new things to put your heart into. So there is some sort of block there. Subconscious influences in position number 3 there could be referring to the fact that how we looked at our own sense of self-love, our own sense of self-worth. So it could be a reminder to the fact that how we view ourselves, is that in a positive, open way before we actually go out into the world and do what we do, and if not, is that colouring our actions? Is it preventing us from being open and expressing our heart's potential? In position number 4 here, I've done a reversal of the Ace of Cups. So if it's reversed in this position, it could mean that there's previous trauma from preventing you to be emotionally open in the present. Could be relationship trauma, family trauma, that sort of thing. So here we see the card in position number 5, the position of hopes and goals, to find something or someone to make life more meaningful, to have more love in your life on all levels. So that could also mean spiritually, or as part of a job that is more heartfelt. And again, in position number 6 here, immediate future. A new opportunity is potentially on your way soon, so be open to new beginnings that will enhance your life, making you more loving and open. And the more you are that way, the more you get back in return. So it's the law of giving. Position number 7, how you are affecting your situation, how you are. It could mean that you're a source of empathy and support for those that need it. Position number 8, again another example of a reversal, how others are affecting your situation. So it could mean that someone is not appreciating your love, your openness and your inspiration, your kindness. Obviously if this card is upright, then it means that your external environment, your world is more supportive of you. Position number 9 here, guidance, advice, warnings. With openness to love comes the experience of sorrow and loss. Be prepared for both sides of the coin. So it's that vulnerability that comes with being open. And finally, in position 10, long-term outcome. So look upon your life as a set of experiences and as a learning curve leading you up to this point. If you're open with your heart, you will align to new possibilities and insights, such as in your relationships and spiritual path. And when you get the ace at the at the end position of the spread, you can, if it is unclear, deal another couple of cards to see how that manifests. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video on the Ace of Cups. So I think next time I will be going on back to the Major Arcana and tackling the Lovers. Okay, bye for now.